2020. Let's rewind about the things that we did in this year. As we all know that we have started our journey on April 15. Till now, we came across with 37 sessions with new various topics. And we can proudly say that all our sessions will be handled by eminent personalities. With our strong dedication, we have almost 100 participants and also more than 150 registrations. And I'm taking this moment to thank all the sections organized all our 37 sessions. That is IEEE Kerala section, Computer Society of India Trivandrum Chapter, Internet Society Trivandrum Chapter, Vakkom Moulavi Foundation Trust Trivandrum, and IEEE Engineering in Medicine and Biology Kerala Chapter. And I'm also expressing my sincere gratitude to the entire crew behind this success. Thank you all. Well, we can move to our today's session, yes, the last session in this year 2020, and it's our 38th session too. On brain death, a misnomer, medically unproven, religiously wrong, philosophically unacceptable, and a legal fiction. Our session will be handled by Dr. Sadanandan Ganapathy. In order to welcome you all, I invite Fagisri for the welcome address. Ma'am, please.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Nelson Mandela once said, and I quote, "The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall." Good evening, everyone. I, Bhagyashree VS, welcome all of you to the 38th webinar of Intersociety Weekly Webinar Series. Today, we aim to discuss about the usual misnomer in our society, brain death. To speak from various aspects about this topic, with immense pleasure, let me welcome Dr. Sadanandan Ganapathy, sir. Welcome, sir. Next, I would like to welcome A.G. Anilal, sir, and Dr. N.N. Pankaj, sir, to this session. I would also like to welcome A.G. Harindral, sir, Chairman of Intersociety Activities Committee Kerala section, and all other eminent personalities gathered here to this session. I also would like to welcome Aishwarya Ravi, MC for today's webinar, and all the participants to this session. Once again, I cordially welcome you all to this event. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. In order to introduce our speaker to us, I invite A.G. Anilal. Sir, please.
Good evening.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Advocate K. Sadanandan of Kollam was a freedom fighter, socialist, and the godfather of the cooperative movement in Kerala. Had 4 children, Hari, Sri, Ganapathy, and Nama. Hari, Sri, Ganapathy, Nama. Dr. Ganapathy, the third among them, is our distinguished guest here. As his name symbolizes, he is an abode of wisdom and the leader of Ganas, a huge army of fans and followers. Dr. Ganapathy, who is fondly called Ganam and Gampi, had his schooling in Rishi Valley School and conceptualized by Dr. Beasant to be developed as a world university and founded by Jiddu Krishnamoorthy. It's now rated among the best boarding schools in the world, an institution where only the most affluent are able to get their wards admitted. Thanks, however, to the brilliance of the child Ganapathy, it secured him a full government scholarship to cover his entire expenses in the school. After that, he joined the Trivandrum Medical College in 1966, when there were only about 300 medical seats in the entire state. He was also engrossed in various extracurricular activities. He represented the college in football and captained the college cricket team to win the university championship. Also, he was a good athlete, a sprinter and a high jumper, and played excellent hockey and tennis. He was the founder secretary of the Kerala Medical Students Association and is considered a good orator in English and Malayalam. After graduating from the Trivandrum Medical College, he completed an MPhil program in Hospital Administration and Health Systems Management. From 1973, he has been running a very popular family clinic, SD Clinic at Sakthikulangara, Kollam. His main areas of interest are ethics of medical practice and reincarnation. He is considered an expert on brain deaths, which he believes is a misnomer. He approached the Chief Justice of the Kerala High Court with a public interest litigation alleging lax practices in pronouncing on brain death and sought orders to include two professors of neurology from government medical colleges in the four-member panel certifying brain deaths and to perform EEG and brain angiogram before certifying one brain dead. The Chief Justice asked the state government to consider the petition. The meeting was convened by the government when the suggestions of Dr. Ganapathy were accepted in principle, and he was made to believe that government would issue orders based on his contentions. But allegedly under the influence of the corporate hospitals, the government went back on their promise. Dr. Ganapathy had to carry his battle further to the Supreme Court. In this case that is under the consideration of the Apex Court, he pleaded the case on his own, on personal appearance, for two reasons. The most important, which was his conviction, which is proved right, that no advocate would present the case as effectively as him, and the other, not less important, that no ordinary citizen can afford to engage a lawyer of the Supreme Court, however justifying his case be. I'm afraid, with my narration about him and in particular his appearance before the court, High Court and Supreme Court, pleading by himself and his unceasing fight with the unscrupulous, he may be mistakenly portrayed as a somber old man. He is in fact brimming with energy, with a great sense of humor. Dr. Ganapathy's view is that the concept of brain death is wrong medically, religiously, philosophically, and legally. Let us now hear from the doctor himself. Thank you.
Thank you, Anilal, for the very flattering words. With your permission, I would like to start with a small prayer. If you are familiar with the chanting of Om, kindly join me. Om. 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 This prayer or chant is very important for my discussion today. The importance of this I'll come to you at a later stage of my talk. As Anila said, brain death is a misnomer. There's only transient or temporary, irreversible loss of brain function. But for the matter of convenience, I will use the word brain death. There are two concepts of brain death. One, the whole brain death followed by almost the entire world, and the brain stem death that is followed in Britain and India. Why it happens, I will again explain a little later. Brainstem is only a 1/10 of the brain. To say that brainstem death is equal to whole brain death is like saying there is no light in the toilet, the entire house is in darkness. What causes brain death? If there is trauma to the head, either due to assault or due to accident or infection like encephalitis or meningitis, or intracranial lesions which we call as tumors or bleeding aneurysms, the pressure inside the brain increases. Suppose there's a tumor, growing tumor in the abdomen. The abdomen can hold the tumor without any increase in the intra-abdominal pressure because the anterior abdominal wall is elastic. But the brain is enclosed in a hard skull, the brain having very limited scope for enlargement, which we call brain edema. So due to this injury or infection or bleeding aneurysm, when the pressure in the cranium is increased, when the pressure reaches a stage, when the pressure in the cranium is more than the pressure in the 4 blood vessels supplying the brain, blood cannot flow into the brain. I think as engineers, you know it much better than I do. But when blood does not flow to the brain, what happens is, devoid of oxygen, brain cells, which we doctors refer to as neurons, also die. Neurons function by electrical activity. So when there is no oxygen, neurons die. So what happens when there is brain death, or as I earlier said, transient non-function of the whole brain? The brain edema sets in. When the brain edema sets in, there is, as I said earlier, there is no blood supply to the brain. Now, this is a process that can be reversed, which is not accepted by the transplant surgeons. The moment they see a picture of this type, they persuade the relatives to donate their organs on the wrong information that the patient has suffered irreversible loss of brain function. I'm sure you all seen footballs, not the present day football which I have not seen. In the days when I was playing football, the football consisted of a hard outer leather case and inner rubber bladder. We would inflate this bladder and fill the leather outer case and then tie it up and start playing football. Now take this old time football, pass a rubber tube, hollow rubber tube from the left side between the bladder and the hard leather case, take it around, bring it out through the right side. You push in water from the left side of the rubber tube, water will come out through the opposite side. Now you start inflating the rubber bladder. A stage will be reached when the bladder will almost fill the leather case so that water cannot flow into the bladder, into the leather case, or come out through the opposite side. Now, this is what happened to the brain also. Now, what happened? Suppose you deflate the bladder. You can continue to pump in water, which will come out through the outside. This is what we doctors do to reduce the intracranial pressure by medical means and by surgical means. Last year, a patient of mine who was in Chennai met with a very severe road accident, serious head injuries. Luckily for him, he was taken to the government medical college. When medical measures failed and the intracranial pressure was not coming down, what the neurosurgeon did was he removed the entire top vault of the skull, removed it, put it in the peritoneal cavity of the patient, and allowed the brain to shrink. When the brain was substantially shrunken and the skull could accommodate the brain, the skull was replaced. And even last week, he came to me with a slight fever. Though he has a slight limp, he leads a very normal life. Now, the brain, transplant surgeons want us to believe that once the patient is brain dead, he is gone. That's not true. What can a brain dead patient do? You must have all seen dead people. You must have touched them. Hold to touch. Eyes are normally closed. They don't breathe. Hearts don't beat. They cannot pass urine. They cannot pass feces. Nothing. They are dead. But a brain dead patient, the only thing the brain dead patient can't do is to breathe. Heart beats normally. Pulse is normal. Blood pressure is normal. Temperature is normal. The patient can get infections and can be treated. You can feed liquids through a tube. It will absorb and excrete it. You can use semi-solid food, which will absorb, digested, and excreted. Young girls can attain menarche. And technically, they can even become pregnant. Now, if you can Google recoveries after brain death, you will find so many cases of people certified brain dead, but who later came back to life. I'll bring to your attention a very few cases. One is that of Beatrice Way of Essex in England. In England, US, and most European countries, there is one rule. If the patient is certified brain dead, the relatives have only two options. Either the patient will be withdrawn from all life supporting measures, otherwise, you have to donate your organs. Beatrice Way's husband was told, your wife is brain dead. There is no way she is not going to live. Why don't you donate her organs? He refused. He took Beatrice to another hospital where she recovered. Back home, leading a normal life. 6 years later, she delivered a very normal girl. Franklin De Silva of Brazil was again certified brain dead. Now, there is one condition. That is, if the brain dead patient is pregnant, she shall not be withdrawn from life supporting measures. The pregnancy has to be allowed to be completed. So Franklin De Silva of Brazil was certified brain dead. They suggested organ donation. The husband refused. She recovered. 127 days later, the longest in the history of brain dead patients delivering babies, she delivered two beautiful girls, twins. Alfie Vance, a British toddler, barely 2.5 years old, due to a bleeding aneurysm, was certified brain dead. The parents, Catholics, they said, we do not believe in brain death, and we may be allowed to take the child to another country. The hospitals refused. The parents wanted to take the child to another country, so they approached the court. In the High Court, Justice Hayden said, he is brain dead, which means he is dead. We cannot treat dead bodies, waste of time and waste of money. So all treatment should be withdrawn. Pope Francis intervened. He kept an air ambulance ready. He told the British government, he'll transport the child and parents to Rome, to the best hospital. But Justice Hayden refused to relent. He ordered withdrawal of life support measures on the small toddler, aged 2.5 years. Life support measures were withdrawn in spite of protests from the parents. The young child struggled for 26 hours. No water, no oxygen, no medicines, and breathed his last 26 hours after life supporting measures were withdrawn. If this child was really brain dead, he would not have survived for more than half an hour. Obviously, the child was not brain dead. John Pickering, an American, met with severe road traffic accident, had very severe head injuries. He was taken to hospital in Texas. In the hospital, they certified him brain dead and suggested to the father they allow organ retrieval and organ transplant. Father agreed. All arrangements were made for the organ retrieval. Transplant surgeons came from various parts of Texas. The father went to say goodbye to his son. He held John's hand between his palms and said, "Goodbye, son." The son pressed his hand back. This was repeated several times. A dead body will not do that. So Mr. Pickering went and told the doctors, there shall be no organ donation. You must continue to treat my son. The doctors did not relent. They said, you are given permission for organ transplant. They made all arrangements. You will go ahead with organ transplant. But what Pickering did was, an army man who went home, brought his army gun, sat in front of the IC unit and said, anyone entering the unit to try and remove my son to the operation theatre will be shot dead. The hospital security men came inside. The hospital authorities complained to the police. The police came, but Mr. Pickering refused to relent. He kept at bay all these people for 24 hours. And then John Pickering, the young boy, opened his eyes. And 4 weeks later, they walked out of the hospital hand in hand. This whole question of brain death revolves around, the word consciousness, irreversible loss of consciousness. What is consciousness? Nobody knows. Aristotle, Plato, Platonius, so many philosophers try to come in terms with what is consciousness, and they failed. In modern medicine, consciousness is only 150 years old from the time of Sigmund Freud. And according to modern medicine, there are only 2 stages of consciousness. One is arousal and 2 is awareness. So you're unconscious, you open your eyes, that is arousal. When you look around, you're in the hospital bed, there are doctors, nurses moving around, you're on a glucose drip and so on. That is awareness. The arousal part of the consciousness is said to be confined to the brainstem. And the greater part of awareness is confined to the cerebral cortex. But nobody knew whether it was true or not. If it is true, which part of the right brainstem and the cortex was the area of consciousness. As late as 2016, scientists of the Harvard University said this specific area of brainstem is responsible for arousal. And this specific area of brain cortex is responsible for awareness. They are quick to admit, but our study was too small. And we cannot be sure of this. Another set of scientists, again from the Harvard University, said consciousness is not confined to any particular part of the human brain. Every cell in the brain is involved in the process of consciousness. Then the scientists from UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, came up with the theory that consciousness is not confined to the brain or the body, but even outside the body. What is consciousness in the Hindu religion? We must go back 30,000 years, even before the Hindu religion came into existence. Indian tribal doctors, more than 30,000 years ago, used chants, beating of drums, and lit torches to create an aura of altered consciousness. And under this altered consciousness, patients were advised by the tribal doctor as to what he or she is and what or he should do. They were cured of their mental illness by this method. It's really age-old method, 30,000 years. Ayurveda, 2,500 years ago, Charak Samskrita, described how drugs can be used to alter consciousness and do major surgical procedures. 2,500 years ago, the Vedas described 10 stages of consciousness, of which the last 4 are super consciousness, which is one with God. Now I come to the prayer with which I started. In the Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad described 4 stages of consciousness. As I said, Om is normally written as Om or M. It is more correctly written as A-U-M. A stands for the conscious mind, U for the unconscious mind, M for the subconscious mind, and the silence between 2 Oms is referred to as Turiya, T-U-R-I-A. That is superconsciousness or one with God. You are all familiar with one or 2 common Sanskrit terms. Aham Brahmasmi. What is Aham Brahmasmi? I am Brahma, I am God. What you see in the Shabarimala, Tattvam Asi, Tattvam Asi. Thou art I am. I am the what? I am God. God is in me. Then, how can you say that consciousness can be irreversibly lost when consciousness is one with God? Let us look at religions. Religions are commonly divided into 2. Semitic religions and non-Semitic religions. Semitic religions are the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians. They don't believe in reincarnation, but they all believe that soul or consciousness ultimately reaches the abode of the God. In non-Semitic religions, Hinduism, Sikhs, Jains, and the Buddhists all believe in reincarnation. So you reincarnate. The death is not the end of you. What happens when you reincarnate? You reincarnate with your consciousness, with your memory. So on what basis can we say that consciousness is irreversibly lost? Let us look at what some great brains said. I just referred to Aristotle, Plato, and Platonists. I'm not going to go into that in detail. But Professor Laszlo, a great Hungarian philosopher, said that consciousness is not confined to the human body, it is cosmic. Consciousness is present in the entire cosmos. Professor Wiesberg, very famous professor, he said that our trying to learn consciousness is like the squirrels trying to learn quantum mechanics. Professor David of New York University again said, consciousness is not confined to the brain or the body. Animals, birds, trees, rivers, mountains, and even stones have consciousness. So on what basis do we say the brain is the seat of consciousness, or particular areas of brain are the seats of consciousness? Talk about memory. Memory, consciousness cannot exist without memory. For example, why are you sitting here listening to this old man? It was announced earlier that there will be a webinar. One old man will be talking on brain death. So you are here. Remember that. You are conscious of the meeting to start at 6 p.m. today. You read in the newspaper that a particular lady had died. You remember with a lot of affection. This lady was a kindergarten teacher. You have not met for 40 years, but you remember. That is memory. You are conscious of your relationship with the teacher who died. That is memory. You all know what memory is. Do you know what genetic memory is? I'm sure all of you know. If you do not know, you must have witnessed the results of genetic memory. You take a newborn child, barely 1 hour old, delivered, given a good bath, back in the hands of the mother. Mother takes the child to the breast, puts the nipple in the child's mouth. The child suckles milk. How does the newborn child know that there is milk in the mother's breast? And it must suckle in order to get milk. Genetic memory. Have you seen puppies? You may have 4 or 6 puppies in a litter. They are blind at birth. You move the puppies away from the mother. These blind puppies will find its way to the mother's nipple and drink milk. Why? How did the puppies know that it needs milk and it is in the mother's breast and it is mother's breast is located in such and such a place? Genetic memory. Have you seen tailor birds, nest of tailor birds, the most beautiful things on earth? Everybody thought the mother birds, the mother parents of the birds must be teaching the young ones how to build a tailor bird's nest. So to find out, what was done was an acre of land was enclosed in nets with no contact with the outside world. 2 eggs were hatched, male and female, tailor birds. They grew up in the enclosure with no contact with the outside world, no birds, no humans, nothing. When they are mature enough, they went and built the most beautiful nest in the world. Again, genetic memory. You are familiar with genetic memory now. What is past life memory? Is it possible for you to remember your past life? I do not know if you have read Brian Weiss, the famous American psychiatrist. He was an expert on regression. Psychiatrists resort to regression therapy. Suppose a grown-up person is brought to a psychiatrist, major psychiatric problem. The reason why the person has a problem may be something that happened in childhood. So you regress the patient. So you go back to your married life, you go back to your hostel days, you go back to your college days, you go back to your school days, go to infancy and so on. Sorry. To identify the problem. So patients would be referred to Professor John Weiss. He would regress the patients and treat them. He was such an expert on regression therapy. So one hospital nurse was referred to Professor Weiss with matrimonial problems. So on 3 different days, Professor Weiss regressed this lady from her adulthood to her infancy. He could not get any answer to the problem. On the 4th session, purely by accident, Professor Weiss told her, go back to the beginning of your problem. When did this happen? The lady, under hypnosis, recited her experience. And in an Egyptian army camp, we were forced to work as a prostitute. That was the reason of her present problems. So, subsequently, Professor Weiss was able to regress many of his patients to a previous life to identify the problems and treat them. Are you familiar with Ian Stevenson? Again, a great American psychiatrist who is well known for his work on past life memory. He traveled around the world, even to India, a number of times to identify children with memories of their past life. After a great deal of work, he was able to isolate nearly 2,000 children from around the world who remembered. This was verified. What they stated was verified, that we are able to remember their past life. So your memory or your consciousness, according to Professor Weiss and Ian Stevenson, is carried to the next birth or the birth thereafter. Then how can we say that consciousness is irreversibly lost? The extent to which the transplant surgeon resort to unethical practice to get at organs is unbelievable. In India, we are waiting list of 5 to 10 years for organs. In the US, it is 10 to 15 years for certain organs. But in China, there is no wait list for organs because 90% of organ donors are prisoners. Suppose hospitals need 100 kidneys, 50 livers, 50 hearts, and 50 pancreas. What they do is they round up a particular Muslim tribe, Kollam. They are considered anti-nationals. At any given time, 450,000 of them are under detention. So if you need 100 kidneys, 50 of these healthy youngsters are rounded up. There's a one-day army trial, and they are sentenced to death by shooting. But the problem arises if the person is shot dead, his organs cannot be transplanted. So what is done is the prisoners are taken to the hospital, their organs are retrieved and transplanted, they are tied to poles and shot in the head. And China has no wages for organs. Euthanasia. You are all familiar with euthanasia. When a seriously ill patient in great suffering and great pain do not want to continue her life or his life, approach court of law saying that she should be allowed to have euthanasia. And after all deliberations, tests and all that, the court can order euthanasia. The patient is given a lethal injection and allowed to die peacefully with her knowledge. But what happens in most of the countries is now, if a patient is allowed to die by euthanasia, only half the dose of medicine is given. So the patient does not die, the patient is unconscious. Then the patient's organs are retrieved for transplant. So what kills the patient is not injection for euthanasia, but organ retrieval and transplant. 2 years ago, in our own country, in Kanchipuram in Chennai, At about midnight, an ambulance was going, and the crying of a lady was heard from the ambulance. People stopped the ambulance, and they found an old man and people from the church, local church, 2 people there, and this old lady wailing. And the old lady told the people that my husband is all right. They are taking him to the hospital to remove his organs and kill him. The case was filed. Enquiries were on. The St. Joseph's Cathedral in Kanjipuram. So, the priest is Joseph. On examination, they found there are 50 walls, air-conditioned walls, in the church compound, containing 3,000 bodies in walls, 3,000 bodies. None of the bodies had vital organs. So what happened to the organs? These people were taken to the hospital, their organs retrieved or harvested and transplanted, and the body is given back to the church. You'll be shocked to know that human body without organs is worth 1.5 to 2 crores in the American market. So imagine how much the priest was getting from 3,000 bodies. So we do not understand what consciousness is. We know that consciousness is not irreversibly lost. We know the very concept is wrong, religiously wrong, medically wrong, philosophically wrong. And the question of brain death has not been questioned anywhere in the world. My case is the first of that type. So it remains a legal fiction. So we do not accept brain death. The oft asked question to me is, doctor, why did you go to court on such a subject? I'll tell you. I had a prolonged heart disease. On 1st July 2015, I was posted for a difficult heart surgery in Mayot Hospital, Chennai. I called members of my family and told them, in case something goes wrong during or after surgery, I shall not be kept under ventilator for more than 24 hours. After that, all my organs should be given for transplant. My doctor Geetanjali said, Acha, nothing will happen to you. And if something happens, you will do as you say, but do not put it in black and white. If you put it in black and white, you could be killed, because we are paid 4 lakhs in the hospital, but your body, brain death body, is worth 1.5 to 2 crores to the hospital. So I approached the government. I searched around the world. I searched what is happening in India. My daughter and I contacted more than 3,000 friend experts around the world. Everywhere, poor youngsters were being targeted for their organs. Brain death was only a myth, only an excuse for them to get the organs. In Kerala, the scenario was reversed. All over the world, once the patient is brain dead, the organs are distributed strictly on the priority, a list of priority they have, computerized list of priority. It's never broken. But in Kerala, where a patient is certified brain dead, has a right to heart, a liver, and a kidney. The other kidney is taken by another private hospital. 95% of the 380 odd brain deaths in Kerala, 95% of brain deaths took place in 4 or 5 corporate hospitals. And more than 90% of the organs were transplanted to rich clients in private hospitals. And The rule was 2 doctors from the hospital where the patient is being treated and 2 doctors from another hospital could, even without seeing the patient, without doing preliminary tests, certify the patient is brain dead and retrieve his organs. So I went to court, saying that the test that is being done, central nervous system examination, apnea test, are insufficient proof of the brain death. An angiogram and an EEG has to be done. And the certification has to be done by 2 neurology professors from government medical colleges. This was agreed to by the then Additional Chief Secretary Health and Family Welfare, Mr. Sadanandan. But if my suggestions were accepted, brain death certificate would come to a stop in the state. Major revenue of the hospitals come to standstill. So they made a beeline for the highest authority in the government. I do not want to mention names. And this highest authority called the health minister. Health minister called the health secretary and said, you call another meeting and go back to our old system of brain death examinations. I earlier told the High Court that if the government is willing to convert the minutes of the meeting into a GO, I'll withdraw my case. But instead of that, the government came up with another GO, going back on all the promises they made. So I filed another petition before the High Court. My petition always comes through the Chief Justice, public interest litigation. And as Anilal said, I appear in person. I am given a lot of respect and consideration by the bench. But even in the High Court, the last minute, for reasons which I do not want to discuss now, after standing by my side throughout the case, the Chief Justice on the final day changed his stand. He wrote a government order touching here, neither here nor there. There's some advantages, but not all my needs are met. All my prayers are not met. So I approached the Supreme Court. My case is in Supreme Court. It's been going on for 2 years. No hearing for the last 1 year because of the COVID protocol. But I'm proud and happy in one thing. Before I went to the High Court, in Kerala, there were 72 brain deaths in 2016. That is highest in the world as a proportion to the population. 72 brain deaths in 1 year. After my case, the next year, it came down to 8. That's a great achievement as far as I'm concerned. Well, gentlemen, there is not much to say. I will say that, and by saying that, the very concept of brain death is wrong medically, religiously, philosophically, and legally. I would like to end my case with the words of old wisdom. The learned sage Agastya Muni asked Lord Indra, my Lord, where is God and what is consciousness? Lord Indra said, learned sage, consciousness and God are beyond time and space. You live in time and space. You will never understand consciousness. Thank you, gentlemen. Namaste.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your wonderful session, and thank you for enlightening us with what's brain death. Thank you very much, sir. So we have some questions. Let me point out that. Excuse me, sir.
Yes?
So we have some questions. Let me point out that.
Go ahead.
Okay, sir. First question is that how do you justify organ harvesting when brain death can be unethical and a misnomer? What are your suggestions towards organ donation from patients who can't be revived?
As I said earlier, there is no brain death. Suppose a patient is brought brain injured, there is no way in which you can say that the patient is going to die in 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 12 hours, or 24 hours. So the very concept of brain death is wrong. And it is wrong, therefore, to harvest organs from a patient who is considered brain dead. He is not brain dead. I gave you so many examples of people who even delivered babies months after being certified brain dead. I gave you examples, 2 or 3 examples only. I have hundreds of examples with me. People who recovered after they refused organ transplant. So how do you justify? There is no justification whatsoever. No, your suggestions is towards organ donation for a patient who can't be revived. That is what I said. There is nobody, no doctor, nurse can say that this patient cannot be revived unless the patient is dead. Now, the new concept is donation after cardiac death, DCD. You wait for the patient to die. You suffer cardiac death, or normal death. 30% of organ transplants in the US and Europe are done from patients who are dead, who have suffered cardiovascular death. Then there's nothing such as brain death.
Okay,
yes,
sir.
I am more worried about another aspect. Yes, you are very right. If brain death from 72 came down to 8, it means at least 60 people the previous year were wrongly certified brain dead. I have cases with me. See, there's a standing rule that no money should change hand for organ transplant. If a patient is brain dead, the patient's relatives cannot be paid money or the bill cannot be waived for giving. But I have 2 cases. There have been any number. I have voice recording of 2 cases of their relatives being persuaded to donate the brain of their relatives by offering money, by saying your bill of 6 or 7 lakhs will be paid. You don't have to be. Anyway, your patient is dead. The patient can see you from the ICU. It is transplanted. You live through. See, they blackmail you, emotionally blackmail you. Next question is organ harvesting from prisoners. Gentlemen, this happens in China, and anything can happen in China. But there is no way. What I said was a result of a study conducted by 2 very senior officers of the United Nations. Kilgar Mata's report. You can look up Kilgar Mata's report. One is a former Canadian foreign minister. Yes, there are middlemen exploiting and taking large sum of money. Yes, that is true. How do you avoid such cases, doctor? Now, the best way to avoid this is now, as you said, when middlemen are involved, money is involved. Okay? And for organ transplant, money is not to be paid. You take an example of Iran. Iran, there is no waiting list for organs. It is commercialized. They have fixed the price of kidney for 10 lakhs, approximately. So, I want to donate a kidney, I need money, I'm willing to give it for 10 lakhs. There's another person who needs a kidney who is willing to pay 10 lakhs. These people do not meet. They register with the government agency. Government agency find matching donors and recipients, and the transplant takes place. I have put in the suggestion to the government that organ transplant, organ donation should be commercialized. It is commercial now. 90% of organ transplants are commercial now. Only thing is they do not accept it. Recently, you must have read in the paper 5,000 illegal kidney transplant during the last 5 years in Kerala. That's all through middlemen. If this is legalized, see, the money is fixed. If the transplant takes place in the government hospital, no expenses involved for the recipient. Government, private hospital, the rate is fixed by the government. The recipient pays the money, but that is fixed. There is no middleman involved. In fact, by accepting commercial donations and organ donation after cardiac death, there will be no wait list for organs in India in the next 3 years.
What's the difference between the...
Now, the question is, what is the difference between brain death and being in coma? They are both of them are in coma. Brain death patient is in coma. The patient in coma is in coma. But patient who is considered brain dead is in irreversible coma. Coma in most cases are reversible. As I said earlier, with drugs, surgery and all that, coma can be reversed. Even after years, we have reversed comas after years. So that is the difference between brain death is referred to in the UDDA, Universal Declaration. Brain death is that irreversible coma that, but nobody can say when it is irreversible. That's my point. No, if the relatives or if relatives, what if the patient or patient relatives don't succumb to organ donation? Patient cannot succumb because his brain dead cannot respond. If the patient relatives don't succumb to organ donation, nobody can force them. Nobody can force them. They can be very firm. But normally, they are made to believe that there is no going back, that the patient is dead. Be magnanimous. Try and save other lives. So some people fall for these tricks. Permanent vegetative state condition. His only thing is the patient can breathe. The only difference between permanent vegetative and brain death is the patient who is in permanent vegetative state can breathe on his own without respirator. But even people on permanent vegetative state, their consciousness has been revived to a large extent by what we call a nerve implant and stimulation. Yes, any more questions, madam?
No, sir. You have almost cleared all our doubts. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your wonderful session. Let's wind up. Now I welcome Dr. N. Panikar for vote of thanks. Sir, please.
Good evening. Thank you very much for a great presentation. I was really stuck to my seat because everything that he has said is coming from the bottom of his heart, from the depth of his professional wisdom, and also his large concern for the society. Basically, the problem is brain death certification that he has discussed. He would welcome the cardiac death as a proper certification for death, but not brain death, because brain is not limited to a particular organ called brain, or the consciousness is not particularly related to the brain alone. Consciousness is in all the cells and also probably outside the body also. That is what he is really referring to. So simply because a person has lost consciousness and then declare that as a brain death state, and then use that as an alibi for exploitation, that is what he is really concerned about. But there is a bigger question. Organ transplant itself has become a business. Even with the rule that the patient or the donor doesn't get any money for it, a large amount of money is made by other people, middlemen, hospital, surgeons, and other people. So the whole concept of organ transplant, that also has to be looked into. I welcome him I will request him to consider this, because an opportunity is given for exploitation by organ transplant, except when it is absolutely necessary, except when in rare cases. As a rule, you can live the way you want without caring in your lifestyle, without caring for other people. And the way, if you have the money, you can have another part, like a car, a new part for the body, not for the car. That is the concept that is emerging now. It's a very serious issue here. And then they are willing to buy this, not only from their own countries, but also coming to places like India to get these organs, the spare parts for their continued living. So the whole, when he talks about the religious aspect of it, I would also consider the ethical aspect of the whole issue of promotion of brain death certification. Also, the whole idea of organ transplants, except for example, the retina or eye utilization of things like that. That's a different issue. That is not necessarily immediately after the death. It can wait. It can, the death would be normal, but the opportunity given to the people who are exploiting this organ transplant has become a big source of wealth, and that's a reality now. And I'm happy that he is bringing up this idea of exploitation that is taking place from his studies in one narrow area of it. But the broader area of organ transplant itself has to be looked into. People have the responsibility to remain healthy, and that is their responsibility. In a very special case, there are certain things that have to be done to keep them alive, keep them in a better condition than they would normally be. That is a very special. I don't want to take up a lot of questions. My role is to give a vote of thanks. I am giving this vote of thanks not only for the excellent presentation, but also for the service that he is doing to the society by taking this issue all the way to the Supreme Court by himself. And I can imagine the kind of threats that he is facing, the kind of pressures that are put on him as a medical professional. Because the people who are interested in this, they are for money. And such people would go to any length. And I know that he is facing threats himself. So, but he has done a very great service to the society. So I thank you for that. Thank you for that first. Second thing is for the presentation and also the answers that he has given to the various questions. And thank you very much for making this evening great for all of us. And thank you also our introducer, who is Dr. Lal Chand Anilal, and also Aishwarya Ravi has done a very good job in presenting the questions, and so all of you, and of course Engineer Harindra Lal has made this a great event for the last many weeks, and thank you all for this great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, doctor. Thank you, all the participants who made this a wonderful one. Thank you very much.
Fine.
Next week we have our finished talk number 39, promise and implication of Quantum Science and Technology,
അടുത്ത ആഴ്ച.
a revolution like no other, by Professor Elias Stowe, PhD, Carnegie Mellon University, Pittsburgh. Next week, 6th January, same time, 6 to 7 p.m. Our request to participate in this one. Thank you very much.
വളരെ നന്നായിരുന്നു സാർ. മതിയായിരുന്നോ?
Yeah, well done.
Dr. Ganapathy, he's
Close.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Dr. Ganapathy.
Dr. Ganapathy.
Great session, great meeting for all of us. And many people have appreciated your talk and your mission.
Personally, I'm really fascinated by your mission. Regarding the question of organ transplant being exploited and being used as a moneymaker, what can we do? It is actually money made in the name of ethics, in the name of helping people, in the name, as if it is a great thing that they are doing, but they are making money. So, is it possible to have a rule that there is no money made in organ transplants?
It's a question to me.
Yes.
See, nobody is going to give his organ free of cost. Now we call it altruistic donation. That is, you give your organ, mostly kidneys, to another person free because of affection. But all the certificates are hooked up. Recently, there was a case registered. In fact, the DSP came to see me. 5,000 kidneys were transplanted during the last 5 years, illegally.
Mm-hmm.
And one foreigner is supposed to pay 1 crore rupees for a kidney. So there is no way in which one is going, so I can give my kidney to my wife or my daughter can give it to me. But you're not going to give it to a stranger free of cost. Only 2 things you can do to remove this malady is, see, if I got 2 kidneys, I need only 1 kidney, I need 10 lakh rupees, I give my kidney. That's it. And X or Y needs a kidney, he has 10 lakhs to pay, he pays me the money. I don't meet him, he doesn't meet me. It's done through the government agency. So make organ, see, except for the heart and lungs, all other organs can be transplanted live. You don't have to wait for a patient to suffer death, brain death. So if organ transplant is commercialized and you start the issue of donation after cardiac death. See, now, if a patient suffers brain death in Trivandrum, the maximum you can take the heart is to Ernakulam. Within 4 hours, the heart has to be transplanted. But if a patient suffers cardiac death, there is what we call a heart box, lung box, and heart-lung box in the US. The heart, after his death, that is cardiovascular death, after his heart is stopped, is removed, put into this heart box. And the heart is perfusing the patient's own blood. There's a mechanism to do that. And the heart can be transplanted, beating and warm right across the US. And with better results because there is no ischemia involved. Same is lung. Breathing lung is transported across the continent for transplant. So how do you get out of the problem? One, commercialize organ transplant. Encourage organ donation after cardiac death. There will be no shortage of organs or waiting for organs in 3 years.
Thank you very much. Let us really watch for the future. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Good night to all.
Good night.